Moving on now, time for a CBS Mornings Plus exclusive. First-term Democratic Senator Elissa Slotkin of Michigan entered the national spotlight this week as she delivered her party's response to President Trump's address to a joint session of Congress. In Slotkin's 10-minute speech, she acknowledged that Republicans aren't wrong that government waste and border security need to be improved, but she also said the way the Trump administration is going about it is wrong. She called the president's actions chaotic and dangerous for democracy. Let's take a listen.
We just went through another fraught election season. Americans made it clear that prices are too high and that the government needs to be more responsive to their needs. America wants change, but there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way. And we can make that change without forgetting who we are as a country.
By the way, CBS News polling shows that Democrats want lawmakers to oppose them as much as possible, but nearly half of Dems don't think their leaders in Congress can do so effectively. And the vast majority of viewers who watched Trump's speech said they approved of his message. We should note that viewership was heavily Republican. So Republicans overall are pleased with where things are going, but what about Democrats? Where do they go from here? Joining us now from Capitol Hill is Senator Elissa Slotkin for her first interview since giving the Democratic rebuttal. Senator, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. You really focused on democracy being at stake in your rebuttal. You said you've seen democracies flicker out in all of your time that you've spent working in national security overseas. But it was a free and fair election. The president is delivering on the promises that he made. Is that not democracy at work?
Well, look, I mean, I think the central thing that President Trump was pushing for in his election was economic security, right? Was changing the economy, was making things more affordable for people. And on that very basic principle, he is just not meeting the mark by any standard. Inflation's going up and not down. And the plans that he's making in order to, find all this money and all the couch cushions are so that he can give a payoff to other people and make you pay in your life. So I think that central idea, I question whether that's actually succeeding. But we don't have to compromise who we are as a democracy to do the change that people want. Like, I worked in the federal government. I saw fat on my own. I mean, you want to cut the government, I'm with you. I understand that there is fat to be cut. I'll help you. But there's a responsible way and a reckless way, and I think that's what I tried to talk about in the speech.
You said those very words, actually, in the speech about that you'll help in cutting that, in speaking about DOGE and how it has gone about it. So I guess the question is, what is the alternative? If you do want to cut, how would you go about it? Where are those cuts?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think, any department or agency, I used to work at the Pentagon, I used to work at the CIA. Anyone who works there knows that there's, programs and things that probably were important 20 years ago, 40 years ago, that maybe don't need to continue. Their legacy issues. But for national security agencies, for people who protect our clean water or do the testing, on our water, just take a beat and say, what are the missions that we can cut that don't make sense anymore? And what are the missions that keep Americans safe every day? And I think that's the difference between responsible and reckless. And then on top of that, I do not like this idea of a bunch of people using AI software to come into these departments and agencies, take your data, put it on a private server, your tax data, your medical data, and then do God knows what with it. I think the privacy issue there for a bunch of 20-year-olds from DOGE, I mean, Democrat, Republican, I don't think most people like that. So again, it's not that fat shouldn't be cut. It's like, cut the stuff that is truly fat and doesn't make us less safe.
Senator, a lot of Democratic voters, I don't have to tell you, that they're sitting at home disillusioned. They feel that their leaders in Congress are not doing enough. They don't have a unified strategy. What are Democrats in Congress doing to check the president?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the ways that, and I talked about this at the end of my speech, first of all, don't get discouraged. We got to keep going here. If generations before us had given up and said, oh, it's hard, democracy, is difficult, well, then I certainly wouldn't be here as a woman senator, right? So we got to keep fighting. But then I think it's basically, a combination of legislation, where can we make real change even though we're not in the majority here in Congress. Litigation, there's 1,000 lawyers across the country working on cases right now, particularly where the president is, ignoring basic constitutional things. there's communication. We gotta talk online and in person as much as possible. Keep bringing these issues up and highlighting them. And then, we've got elections in 2 years, and that's the real way that democracies meter out how they feel about the president and his policies.
Senator, March 14th, that government funding deadline is approaching awfully fast, and Democrats are going to have to get on board with Republicans to pass that and not shut down the government. Will Democrats do that, or is it a chance to make a statement?
Well, look, I mean, in terms of keeping the government open, the Republicans have the White House, the House, and the Senate. So they're in the driver's seat, they're in the passenger seat, and all the good seats in the back. Democrats are in the trunk.
Right, but you will need
so,
some Democrats in order to pass it.
To get
that's what I'm saying. But that's what I'm saying. But if the car is going to crash, it's not because of the guys in the trunk. We need to understand that if we're going to pass a budget and we're going to, appropriate money, as the Constitution says, that the president's not just going to take that money and say, no, Congress, Republicans in Congress said they wanted to spend it on, FEMA, and I don't want to spend it on FEMA. So we got to just have some understanding there, and that's what's being negotiated right now. They do need Democrats. I think they need 7 Democrats to pass. But we also need to understand that, if you're going to pass a budget, we're going to actually implement that budget.
All right, Senator Slotkin, thank you so much for your time.
You bet. Thank you.